Story 1. As a nurse, I see the outcomes and effects of using both. Watching a patient my age in their late 20s die from alcoholic liver cirrhosis really made me never want to drink again. Story 2. My mom's brother seriously injured his leg with a space heater that fell on him while he was under the influence of fentanyl. The heater burned down to the bone, and they had to amputate from the waist down. Story 3. My mom was and still is heavily addicted. I just see a shell of the woman I used to love, and I miss her every day. I have a son now, and I want so much better for him. Story 4. I feel like many of these answers come from people who have never drunk alcohol or used drugs, which is good for them but may not be as relatable to those who struggle. Story 5. Expensive, does not taste good, unhealthy, do not want to become dependent or lose control. That is just alcohol. I do not know anything about drugs, but they are illegal and I would lose my job if I used them, which I would not do for all the same reasons as alcohol. There are no benefits that I can see to weigh against all those negatives. Story 6. I was never really into drugs, but when I drank, I drank. Coming home from a wedding with my family, I had thrown up outside our car, and it scared my son. Since then, I have quit drinking. It has been about 10 months now. Story 7. A good friend of mine died by suicide shortly after I became sober. She was trying to get sober too and succeeded for a while. She died not long after relapsing. I have stayed sober ever since. Story 8. School friends and later friends died from drug use. My ex is an alcoholic, and it led to serious consequences. Story 9. The older you get, the worse it makes you feel in the long term. If something gets worse over time, there is no wisdom in it. Story 10. For me, it is about staying clear-headed and true to myself, being able to chase goals without anything clouding my judgment. I also want to keep my relationship strong and my health in check. What about you? Story 11. I have never been tempted to try drugs, and I dislike drinking alcohol because I sleep poorly afterward. I also enjoy waking up feeling happy and refreshed. Additionally, I definitely do not need the extra calories. Story 12. I had the privilege of being raised by hardcore drug users who eventually became alcoholics. When you are around that lifestyle, it becomes extremely embarrassing. I will not do that to my future children. Story 13. I do not like the smell of alcohol, so I doubt I will enjoy the taste. I smoke cannabis occasionally, about once every 3 months, but I do not plan on going further because it just seems unappealing to me. Story 14. Watching what 50 years of alcoholism did to my husband, our marriage, and family motivated me to not use alcohol. Story 15. Because I have an addictive personality, I was addicted to heroin and oxycodone for years in my younger days. I cannot use drugs or alcohol in moderation. I either use them all the way or not at all. I have tried many times with the mindset of having a little here and there at parties and such. Before long, I become an everyday user. It always goes that way, so I choose not to use at all. Story 16. I never really need motivation, but one major reason why I never started drinking is because every time I go to a bar, I get anxious about sitting down. I wonder, what do I tell the bartender? I don't know what I want because I have never had a drink before, and for some reason, I am convinced they will make fun of me for it. Story 17. Multiple members of my family have died either directly, for example, from overdose, or from health complications they developed from using substances. This is not to mention the years of emotional abuse they inflicted on those around them. Story 18. I used to drink a lot, but then I had 2 children in 2 years, and that pretty much took care of it. I might have 1 glass of wine every 2 or 3 months. We do not have any alcohol in the house at the moment. With young children around, it starts to feel irresponsible to have more than 2 drinks when you are the primary caregiver. Story 19. Alcohol makes me sleepy, even in small amounts. Opioids make me drowsy. I tried cannabis twice and felt absolutely nothing, both edibles and smoking. Good quality from a trusted friend. I am not good at using drugs. Story 20. My dad is a police officer. He has seen plenty of addicts and has told me their stories. When you know how harmful these substances are, you avoid them. Story 21. I find there are miserable people, even those who drink beer every day and smoke marijuana all the time. That motivates me to quit for the sake of my mental health. Story 22. I just do not want or need to. They are objectively poisonous, and I can enjoy life just fine without them. I have never felt any interest in vices like that. I actually detest the idea of losing my mind. It is something to avoid. Alcohol does not even taste good to me in the rare times I have ever tried sips of it. I find it weirder that society venerates it, though I do not really care what others do. Story 23. If I miss just one night of sleep, I start hearing everyone around me say the most awful things about me. I experience some severe induced psychosis and I turn into a complete lunatic. Story 24. I hate how terrible I felt after a night of drinking. It makes me trip in the worst way possible. Story 25. Never really liked alcohol and just don't feel the desire to use drugs anymore. Just enjoying the everyday variety of life. Story 26. My brain is the only asset I have. Physically, I am a potato. I do not like vices that confuse my mind. Story 27. Drinking is fun. I like it a lot. It also made me gain weight, so I stopped. I need to stay alive since I have a child now, so it feels a bit irresponsible to keep drinking despite knowing all the negative effects. At this point, the thing that keeps me going is the streak. I am at 17 months now. If I had a drink tomorrow, I would have to start all over. That would be disappointing and take a long time to recover. Story 28. My father was an athlete, I am an athlete. Even if I do not go professional, I will always be an athlete mentally, and those things are worse than death. Story 29. My dad being unpleasant when intoxicated. Edit. My dad using alcohol as an excuse to be unpleasant. It is not the same thing. Story 30. My parents were both addicts. They really damaged their children and had incredibly hard lives. My father is still around somewhere. My mother died alone in her apartment, and no one knew. The coroner thinks she was there for over a week. I do not want to go out like that. Story 31. I do not think it is fun to lack control. I also do not like getting sick. I value my job more than a few hours of discomfort. I would rather spend money on things that benefit me. Story 32. Alcohol has an aftertaste that I do not like, and the idea of willingly lowering my own control over myself is not appealing. I already have to deal with other mundane addictions, so I do not need anything else. Story 33. 1. I have generalized anxiety disorder, which comes with intense paranoia. Anytime I have tried drugs or large amounts of alcohol, I experienced nothing but fear and near panic. I observe people who regularly use and consume drugs or alcohol. People who are genuinely impaired annoy me for some reason, so I do everything I can to avoid annoying others the way they annoy me. Story 34. Had legal opioids many times. They have never excited me. Not everyone has the tendency for addiction or the genes. Story 35. Having watched several loved ones die from drug and alcohol abuse. Not to mention both make most people intolerable. You might be having a good time, but the people who have to deal with you are not. Story 36. Random people using it and acting crazy is one thing. Seeing childhood friends use it and showing sides of them you never thought possible is another. I had one friend going down a wrong path with drugs and alcohol for years. He is okay now but still not doing anything with his life. Others use alcohol during fun times and are like most people who get drunk. I see it for what it is. Most of them have an addiction that is ignored because of our drinking culture here in Belgium. Story 37. I cannot handle the loss of control I have over myself and my words. Also, jail is not an option because I do not want to be someone's pet. That is scary, and I am self-aware enough to know I would not last long even in the nicest jail. Story 38. The fact that they are really bad for you should be enough motivation. However, nowadays, it seems to be something overlooked because people are short-sighted and do not see the long-term effects. They would rather have the high than think about what they are actually doing to their bodies. Addiction is not a pretty thing to deal with. Whether it is your own addiction or watching someone else struggle with it, drugs and alcohol are a real drain on society. Story 39. A family member and a few people I knew died of an overdose. Alcohol addiction runs in my family. I also cannot drink because of my antidepressant. Story 40. Having a hangover with young children who want to do active things and turning them down because of it is the worst feeling in the world. Story 41. When I was about 14, my uncle was killed while buying drugs in a deal that went bad. My mother, his sister, begged me through tears to never do drugs, and I never have. Story 42. It's just stupid, honestly. I understand the thrill of the moment, but I can achieve that same high with a dopamine release. Also, I plan to live beyond adulthood. Story 43. I used to drink a lot. My wife played a large role in helping me break the habit. Took a lot of love, tears, and patience on her part, and I would never go back to the way things were. Ironically, she never wanted me to quit drinking completely. She enjoys a drink or two herself, but encouraged me to drink in moderation. I am now very busy with my life, spending quality time with my wife, raising my daughters, and have a great job and a successful side business with my wife. Life is amazing. Story 44. I have tried many of them and did not enjoy any, except for opiates, which I enjoy excessively. Story 45. Life is about realizing that there is more to it. When you are under the stars on this world and understand that you are inside the Milky Way galaxy, which is just one among billions, if not trillions of other galaxies, you begin to see that everything you have been stressed about is insignificant. One of the best thoughts to reflect on from time to time is the odds of you being here now, in this world, galaxy, and universe. The odds of that are 1 in 400 trillion. Those are the odds of someone being born in the right circumstances and alive today in this world right now. That includes you. It seems incredible, does it not? Basically, we are all winners of life. Story 46. Nothing. Reality has long since motivated me otherwise. I will never do hard drugs. Anything with a needle or snorting is automatically out. Just the idea of that gives me the heebie-jeebies, without even considering how bad the drugs are for you. Story 47. Finding it disgusting to watch others and how smoking controls and changes them. Watching a cigarette smoker without cigarettes, they lose their temper. They will pay $8 counted out in pennies to get a pack, making everyone behind them wait. Story 48. I did not, but I overcame addiction by envisioning how I wanted my life to be and working towards that goal. I did not want to live in a vicious cycle of psychosis and loss of self-recognition. Nothing would change unless I changed. Story 49. My responsibilities limit my use of alcohol but do not stop it. Eventually, I end up having a drink to unwind and de-stress. The only reason I do not do it every day is because I love my children and need to be a good mother and do what I need to do. Story 50. I tried a very basic drug and didn't like it. I have friends who use drugs and it harms them, and I don't want to feel that way. Alcohol? There was a time I would drink to feel the high, but I hated the feeling of a hangover. Now, I only drink socially and have no more than 2 drinks or 1 beer. Story 51. Motivation is often a secondary force to counteract the initial desire for substances. When you resolve the initial desire, there is no motivation. It just is. There is no desire for alcohol or drugs. I lost interest in alcohol when I had a hangover so severe that I almost lost my job, had a massive argument with my then partner, and was so afraid of making a mess on the way home from work. Something broke in me that day. When I started doing inner work, I completely lost interest that way. Regarding drugs, I grew up around people who were addicted, which made me lose interest. Yet, in my mid-20s, I tried drugs in spiritual circles. Frankly, it only made me anxious, and the nausea was not worth it. The more I engaged in inner work, especially learning to breathe better, the more I lost all interest in substances. Breath work combined with visualization and mindset helped me experience feelings that would only be fleeting with substances. Talking about the nervous system, a nervous system out of balance requires more external substances and consumption to counteract it, including poor eating habits, but these will never cure it. The more we release tension and stress in our nervous system, the less we need other substances. I would rather see a world where people need fewer things to consume to regulate or relax themselves. Story 52. Never felt the need for drugs. I did drink a lot in the army. I never liked the person I was when drunk. I have the worst luck. My dad got me $100 in lottery scratchers for my 18th birthday. I won a total of $5. I entered a raffle for 2 items. Only 3 people entered, and I lost. The army lost my paperwork and did not pay me for 9 months. They lost it multiple times after that too. So if anything was going to happen from weed, it would be the oldest, craziest thing no one would believe. Story 53. I got older. No hard drugs beyond marijuana and alcohol. It may be a flawed perception, but I felt like I handled them better when I was younger. As I got older, they impacted me more and caused more mental and physical aftereffects. I stopped using them for other life reasons but realized life felt brighter without them. I still have friends who partake, especially marijuana, and I do not judge. For me, at this point in my life, I just feel healthier without them, although at times I miss them in various situations. Story 54. I was dating this girl a long time ago. I met her family, including her father. They were good people. Her father had some unresolved trauma from his childhood and his own father, the girl's grandfather. I also met the grandfather. He seemed down to earth, kind, and calm. He had his life together and was doing well. I did not understand why the father had such a difficult childhood with such an amazing father. It did not make sense. One night at a cottage, most of the family had gone to bed, but the grandfather stayed up talking to me. I had had a few drinks by that point. I was not sloppy. I used to drink heavily, and finishing a bottle alone was not unusual. We talked, and he confided that he used to drink as well. He quit drinking after his children were grown, but he genuinely did not remember raising them. 20 years of his life were missing. Whatever caused his son to hate him, he had no idea what it was. What troubled him most was not remembering his children when they were young. Eventually, she and I broke up for unrelated reasons, and this was a long time ago. But every time my own children run to hug me, ask me to throw them in the air, share a bad dream, color a picture, help me cook, or work on the car, I think about that man I met. I know deep in my heart that nothing is worth destroying those beautiful memories. Story 55. Never quite understood the whole not being in control thing, whether you are drunk or on some sort of drug. Just never really had any interest in being that way. Story 56. Among other things, seeing how it has wrecked other people. Even cigarettes. My grandmother was a heavy smoker, had a stroke while she was still relatively young, and was thereafter completely paralyzed on one side and had aphasia. In her case, she could not write, and she usually said the same word repeatedly. Write, 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 write. Sometimes it would be something random. It's Christmas, it's Christmas, it's Christmas. She looked terrible. Scraggly hair, gaunt face, gray and aged skin, brown and rotting teeth, bones sticking out. And she also became very mean, which made caring for her extremely difficult, especially for my mom, her daughter. She remained like that for about 10 years until she essentially starved herself to death. I will never forget the stark difference between how my grandfather's body looked peaceful and how she looked like a Holocaust victim. She obviously suffered horribly, and her suffering caused my family pain and lasting trauma. It all probably could have been prevented if she had not smoked those cigarettes. In some ways, we lost our grandmother when the stroke happened and then had this poltergeist for about a decade because of smoking. Now, I have a mother-in-law who smokes. As much as I hate to say it, I am not certain she will get to meet a grandchild even if I became pregnant tomorrow. I hate that for her, but even more, I hate it for my husband because he might lose his mother early due to her choices and addiction. To clarify, this was not something we allowed to happen. We fought it for a long time, but she eventually refused to eat. Her last few weeks were spent in a nursing home because she kept purposefully rolling her wheelchair off stairs. She definitely wanted to go. Story 57. I'm an addict. I have my free time on my days off and after work, but I don't drink or smoke. I don't really know why, and I don't think there is a reason. One time, I thought about getting a beer on my day off before seeing a movie, but it just didn't click. I thought that it wouldn't really make me feel good. Story 58. I am already miserable enough. Why add to that with withdrawal, dependence, health issues, and problems caused while intoxicated? Story 59. My dad was an abusive alcoholic. Cliché as it sounds, I don't want to be him. I went to Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous when I was 18 to 24 because I was so terrified of becoming an addict. I had only ever gotten drunk once, but the fear alone led me to being sober, eventually attending Al-Anon, doing therapy, and working through my trauma. Sometimes fear can propel us to the next level. In my case, it helped me grow as a human being. I am grateful today for my adversity, and I no longer view myself as a victim of my circumstances. Story 60. Getting hit head-on at 8:30 a.m. coming home from dropping my kids off at school by a man who was high on methamphetamine, marijuana, and Adderall. Story 61. Drugs. I would never go seeking them, but if they are available, I might have some. Alcohol. I hate being drunk and hate being hungover. Story 62. I drink, but I do not use drugs because I saw where my aunt ended up, and it is heartbreaking. She lost custody of her children years ago when I was little. She lost custody because she chose to try drugs her husband introduced her to. She became addicted, eventually becoming very thin, losing her teeth, and turning paler than usual. Years later, the family discovered that she and her husband lived under a bridge in a troubled town in the state where we all lived. A couple of years ago, she went missing and is now presumed dead. Based on evidence about her husband's behavior and the story that emerged, we believe he killed her by pushing her into the river that connects to the ocean. Her story is tragic because she was vulnerable and did not know how this would end. Her husband used her in many ways, and it was not until the day she disappeared that we learned she truly regretted everything. Letters were found, letters to my cousins she gave birth to. One of them received an unfinished letter that abruptly stopped mid-sentence. We believe this was on or very close to the day she disappeared. Story 63. The deterioration of my body and relationships made me realize I had a massive problem. The most important thing is that I am a parent now. My father bailed on us because he just wanted to party. I saw how it affected my brother and mother. I could never forgive myself if I put them through the same situation. Now I get to live on the edge by actually living life and feeling everything that comes with it. It really is difficult at times, but when it is good, it is heaven. Story 64. I want to stay young for as long as possible to enjoy my future wealth. I am not ready to be old and decrepit. Story 65. When I was a teenager, I actually didn't think adults are dumb. Smoking is cool. When I became a young adult, I tried tetrahydrocannabinol, a water pipe, and even cigars. To be honest, I enjoy a water pipe and cigars, but the work afterwards and the burning sensations in my mouth completely obliterate anything I enjoy about them. As for any harder drugs, I have family members who died younger than me because of them. Even then, just knowing how you end up and how expensive it is to maintain drug use, I never saw why anyone would ever try them. I legitimately never understood the appeal of being dissociated while at the same time destroying my body. Story 66. The last time I smoked cannabis was at a concert. I took 2 hits and then asked where the French Polynesian islands were. I was terrified because I didn't know and felt confused, so I left mid-concert. I got 3 sausage and peppers on my way out. I used to smoke a lot, but I was always afraid of something really silly, like not remembering if I'm cold-blooded or warm-blooded, or forgetting how to blink normally. I would ask friends if I'm blinking like an iguana or if I'm fine. The last time I drank alcohol was when I had the flu, and I don't want to be that sick again. Story 67. Absolutely nothing. If you offer me a drink or free drugs, I will take them without hesitation. I wish I could say no, but I cannot. I do not know why. I just cannot. I hate drugs. I hate alcohol. I hate cigarettes. But free drugs are free drugs. Story 68. I am just growing up knowing they are bad. I am okay with alcohol and marijuana occasionally, with friends or at a party, but I never get drunk. Story 69. Alcohol is quite harmful to you. There is no safe amount to drink. It is literally poison you are ingesting. I do not judge others who drink. I used to drink when I was younger, from my teenage years until I was about 21, but I eventually got tired of it. I also tried a few drugs when I was younger, and the only one I enjoyed was cannabis. I smoked for a while and quit about a year ago because it is addictive and caused many problems in my life. I find being sober much better for my mental health, and I feel more in control of everything. Story 70. As far as drugs go, I grew up in a bad area and saw teenagers and adults being destroyed by drug abuse, so I had a strong motivation to avoid them. I do, however, drink occasionally. For example, if my boss calls me into work early and the closing manager calls out, I end up working for 12 hours. That calls for a glass of rum when I finally get home. Story 71. A traumatic upbringing with my parents is one of the reasons that can lead to misusing substances. Having children of my own and not wanting them to experience the same trauma is more than enough to motivate me to avoid those substances and any others that are harmful. Story 72. I got an Oura ring and saw the real-life statistics of what alcohol was doing to my body even at a low dose. I don't really consume it anymore. It honestly kind of scared me. Story 73. The knowledge that it can only make the situation worse. I was homeless for 2 years, horribly depressed, and jobless. Rock bottom stuff. So I did experiments on myself. If I felt like doing anything mind-altering, I would simply sit with the feeling until it passed. Then, if a day passed and I felt the same, I would write down how I felt to compare with the next time. I would drink lightly or use a small amount of cannabis. Without fail, every single time it was easily 10 times worse. That is when I fully realized that if you do something mind-altering when already distressed, you will have a bad time. That prevents me from abusing any substances whatsoever. I, however, am lucky. I know addictive behavior, and it is not pretty. Story 74. I have so much to lose now. I am in college at 37 years old, have a healthy relationship, and spent years rebuilding my family's trust. Story 75. Having an alcoholic father whose life is falling apart while he refuses to take any responsibility made giving up alcohol permanently incredibly easy. Story 76. The way I see it, it is just not something I need in my life to be happy. So why even go for it? I do like alcohol occasionally, but I do not see the point in overdoing it. After 5 beers, I do not like the taste anymore, especially if I am not eating something in between. Story 77. Inertia. Really, I never picked up drinking and was never truly interested in drugs. I have been curious about alcohol, but inertia has kept me away. The longer I have lived without it, the stronger the pull away from it. Story 78. I work in a liquor store. I see the slippery slope on countless occasions. 1 minute you are drinking every weekend, then every day until you have lost all your teeth, twitching around, high on something, scraping coins to buy a small bottle of alcohol until tomorrow. Story 79. Things are much worse when using them. I have never used that substance myself, but seeing how others behave when they use it hurts me deeply. It makes me not want to harm myself or those around me for something that is not even worth it. Story 80. Dated a person struggling with addiction for about 4 months. Got tired of the lies, deception, and theft, plus living in constant denial when people around were trying to help. Gave up and let go. I did care for her, but in the end, it just became too much to deal with. Story 81. Combat sports. I practice Muay Thai and boxing. Overconsuming alcohol is the fastest way to hinder your progress. Story 82. My mother is older and has medical problems but refuses to give up alcohol. I do not want to be like her. Story 83. My wife, church, and my 2-year-old son. I don't see myself craving my drug anymore, which was Xanax. Most cravings pass well over 2 minutes from the initial thought. If anything, I just catch my brain recycling patterns of thinking. Laziness is difficult to tackle, though. I am trying to switch my energy from being okay with nothing going on to constructively building my life bit by bit. Story 84. 1. Costs more money. Would be looked down on in my social groups. An actual toxin. Many contribute to weight gain. Potential addiction due to family addiction. Less safety. Less safety for my children. I used to have 10 reasons but cannot remember the rest. Story 85. Whenever I feel demotivated thinking that I am not good, people making foolish reels on Instagram and YouTube motivate me because at least I am not worthless like them. Story 86. The person I become under the influence is not pleasant. The trauma and emotions I bury while sober come to the surface when I am intoxicated. Even though I might be fun at first, I cannot stop once I start, and it always ends in regret the next day. Story 87. I had a sister who was addicted to opioids her entire adult life until she overdosed and died. Besides that, getting high just gives me anxiety. Drinking stopped being fun when I was old enough to do it legally. Story 88. From a psychological standpoint, I have always felt that the desire to take substances is driven by a need to have fun. If you give in, you have an easy source of satisfaction that is tempting to always turn to when you want comfort or fun. I would rather work to build a life I can enjoy without substances. It also pushes me to have a more interesting life because I cannot just relax and smoke to have a good time. I need to find something engaging to do. I also do not want to add another addiction to my already long list. Furthermore, especially for alcohol, the consequences of developing a substance habit can be quite destructive. I prefer to avoid those downsides. I am interested in living a long and healthy life, and substances typically do not align with that goal. Additionally, I have been around many intoxicated people, and they are all rather unappealing when drunk. I do not want to become like them. Moreover, the cost of living without substances is substantially lower. Story 89. My uncle was an alcoholic. He died of liver failure before he reached 60. He had about $500,000 after a redundancy payout and selling his house. He gambled and lost it all. His final months were spent living in a caravan. When I went to help my family clean the van, it was covered in black diarrhea and black vomit. He died a horrifically painful death, alone. That is why I stopped drinking. Story 90. Not alcohol but drugs, the downward spiral. My life can go bad all on its own with no extra push needed. Story 91. My downstairs neighbors use drugs. I drink the occasional glass of wine or gin and tonic because it makes me feel fancy. I just do not enjoy the feeling of being drunk or even tipsy. Story 92. Drugs as in narcotics? I grew up in the 1980s, when the message that drugs are bad became deeply ingrained in my personality. On British television, drug addicts were often portrayed as dirty and unkempt people who would resort to crime and do anything for their next fix. As an adult, I understand that the issue is much more nuanced. However, I am happy with my life and have never felt the need to become chemically dependent. I know it would cause far more problems than it would solve. My drug of choice is good music, the kind that causes physical frisson. I do not need chemicals. Besides, even if I wanted to buy narcotics, I do not associate with the social circles where I would meet a dealer. I would literally have to search for, where do I buy drugs? Online. I would not know where to start, and that is a good thing. Story 93. To be in control of my actions 100% of the time. I learned very young, from being surrounded by people who would drink every single weekend, that sometimes people drink to have fun and end up not remembering what happened or what they did. Besides, alcoholic drinks taste awful, too bitter for my liking. Story 94. For drugs, I have been around enough people who use methamphetamine to know I do not want to go down that path. I know I would get addicted very quickly. Story 95. I adore my brother, but I would probably choose death over ever using any kind of opiate in any circumstance, even in the most unbearable pain. He will never be in prison without a phone call, though. Story 96. The insanity of it, thinking it will all be different this time. I recently lost my mother and have used her as a higher power in a sense. Do it for her, do it for me. I have been off the ice for 5 months now. I have never been happier. Story 97. Because they are not good for you in any way, like nothing. If I have issues, I see a therapist or psychiatrist to get legal medication to clear my head so I can handle my issues better. Story 98. As a nurse, I have watched patients die far too young because their brain, heart, liver, and kidneys could no longer tolerate the poisonous effects of drugs or alcohol. It is always sad when someone does not make it to age 70 or older. Scientific and clinical studies are accumulating. No alcohol, illicit drug, nicotine, or cannabis in any form is considered safe for human consumption. Story 99. I was prescribed an opioid and a benzodiazepine 20 years ago by a doctor because I have a lifelong disability that causes pain in my legs. Doctors are now tapering everyone off benzodiazepines and significantly reducing the use of opioids. For the past year, I have been tapering off benzodiazepines until I am almost at the lowest dose before stopping completely. Then comes the tapering of opioids. The withdrawal effects from both of these drugs feel like having a constant bad flu with aches, pains, constant nausea, insomnia 3 nights a week, exhaustion, anxiety and fears, deep depression, and many more symptoms. I would never have taken these drugs if I had known the terrible withdrawal required to become drug-free. I want my life back. Please do not take these drugs. They ruin your life. Story 100. Vanity. I wish that was not the first thing I thought of. But when I hit rock bottom years ago, I took a selfie one day and truly saw what I actually looked like for the first time. Now, that image of myself is burned into my brain even though I look normal again. It was very jarring, especially the thought that I did not see it for so long and suddenly did. I guess it scared me. Also, I wasted so many years not living in the present. Life is short. I do not want to waste any more time that I can spend with my dog or my family now that they are back in my life. Not forgetting, not being someone else, or even worse, upsetting them, making them worry, or blacking out and causing stupid fights. I really do not remember over a decade of my life except for the really traumatizing situations and realizing that chasing substances or drinking caused more and more horrible and traumatic things to happen than necessary. Third, the people I ended up around or had to go through to get the substances. Always stressing about how to get it. It had turned into something that did not even make me feel inebriated anymore. I was spending money I did not even have just to not feel sick, or spending money to feel worse, or spending money to end up with more anxiety, paranoia, or hangovers. Not even having any euphoria anymore. I already feel pretty bad on the regular just as my baseline. I definitely do not need to spend money to feel worse. Story 101. I got clean and sober almost 18 years ago through the Veterans Hospital rehabilitation. I just play the tape forward and realize what it did to me in the past. Story 102. I don't know what motivates me. I'm not going to lie and say I totally avoid alcohol. I've never done street drugs, and I am a senior citizen. I have alcohol in the house. Some of these bottles are over a year old, and there is barely any left. I tend to take life straight on. If I could find liquor that tasted like liquor but without any alcohol, that would be even better. I don't seek the buzz unless I am very overwhelmed. 2 weeks ago was my first time this year. Story 103. Drugs. A few reasons. I like reality and life too much. Plus, I avoided them all through my teens and early adulthood, so why start now, especially knowing the risks? Fear of something going wrong or becoming addicted. Alcohol. I just don't drink to excess often, as I hate being sick. Also, I am a father to an infant I love too much to want to ruin her life. Story 104. Motivates me? Nothing. I just do not have the smallest desire to do either. I have a beer or a cocktail every now and then, but I have not gotten drunk in over 5 years. I like being healthy and active. Story 105. Having gout and keeping a photo of myself from when I was going through a lot of withdrawal. Also, old school RuneScape keeps me busy. Story 106. Working in a hospital for as long as I have given me a behind-the-scenes view of what can happen from prolonged drug use. I never had the desire to try drugs anyway, but I am definitely staying away from them now. Story 107. Growing up with classmates and neighborhood children whose parents were addicts, I saw firsthand the damage it caused. It was hard to watch. However, I am very grateful to have grown up in a house filled with love. Story 108. I am a recovering alcoholic. I have been sober for 6 years, and I do not want to let myself down or my friends who are extremely important to me. They helped me get sober when I was at my worst. Story 109. The idea of needing a chemical substance to happily make it through life disgusts me. If I am unhappy, I would rather address the cause instead of the symptoms. Story 110. I avoid drugs simply because I am not into them. I do not avoid alcohol because I am a rare person for whom it does not cause depression or anger. It makes me happy, and as long as I stay away from spirits, I can have a great all-nighter. Story 111. Never considered drugs, always seemed like a waste of time. Alcohol tastes terrible, thank goodness I'm allergic. Nobody can force me to drink if I tell them I might die. Story 112. What motivates me to stay away from drugs and alcohol? A lot, honestly. First, it started back in secondary school. I saw friends get expelled for using drugs or getting drunk. That alone was enough to show me early on that this behavior can derail your future fast. I knew I did not want to risk getting kicked out too. Then there is my family. We have been through a lot and still are. I saw how my parents sometimes turned to alcohol to cope with the weight of life, and it broke my heart. It never made anything better, just quieter and heavier. I hated watching that pattern take over. I still hate seeing it happen to anyone. That is a big part of why I have always wanted to process my pain or even my joy rationally, not by numbing it. Now that I am in university abroad, things have gotten even clearer. Being an international student is challenging. I have seen students from both extremes, some with serious money, and others who have scraped and sacrificed just to be here. Despite their backgrounds, the one thing that cuts across both groups is the pressure and how normalized alcohol and drug culture is. People use it to cope with stress, failure, loneliness, or just to escape. While I do not judge anyone, I have seen too much of what it does to want any part of it. Watching people spiral, get stuck, or lose themselves is enough to remind me why I made this choice in the first place. Every time life gets hard, I try to stay grounded and face it, not run from it. That is basically it. I know this was a long answer, but it is something I care deeply about. Story 113. The energy I have when I don't drink alcohol is remarkable. I wake up early with loads of positive and productive energy radiating from me. My brain is awake and fully aware of my surroundings. Walking around feeling a little hungover, even when you don't consciously feel hungover, still takes a lot more from you than you realize. Until you stop, that is. It is a gift that keeps on giving. I do have a beer or two occasionally, but I no longer crave it the way I used to. I have other things filling my life. Story 114. My daughter will be here in September. I do not want to be a drunken troublemaker like my father was. I have never done drugs except for some marijuana in high school, but I really enjoy my beer at the bowling alley and the golf course, so this is going to be a big change. Story 115. Being surrounded by drinkers when I was little, I tried once with a friend, committed to never do it again, and that was it. A good high-intensity interval training 1-hour cardio session will make you so dizzy you won't need alcohol. Story 116. I would drink too much at night, have a hangover, and be late to work too many times. I would lose my job and then be unable to pay my rent. Story 117. My family, especially my children. Both for myself and to set a good example for them. Back when I was riding solo and hangovers would last a day at most, I could not have cared less. It's completely different after around 30 years of age when your body aches even without any poison. Hangovers last for multiple days, and you don't get a break from responsibility in the morning. Skipping the self-poisoning is a no-brainer now, and I am taking every chance I can get to sleep. I don't want to be the dad who never does anything with his children because of a hangover or something else like that. Sometimes I wonder how troubled my parents must have been when drinking and smoking were normal household activities. Story 118. I will never miss another surf session again because I was too hungover to get up and go surf. Side note, if you do not surf, do not start. Story 119. I have noticed that ever since I stopped drinking about 10 years ago, I do not make as many mistakes in life. Therefore, I do not have to spend time apologizing and feeling ashamed. Also, I no longer have headaches. Story 120. I drive for most activities. You cannot be under the influence while driving. Also, have you ever had a conversation with someone under the influence of drugs? They are very boring. Story 121. My current life. I would not risk ruining it or losing what I have now. A perfect husband, a beautiful daughter, and strong relationships. Story 122. I do smoke cannabis. as it helps my anxiety and improves my focus. Occasionally, I use mushrooms, but not like my uncle, who is a former inmate, drug addict, and dealer. I don't know how long he has been using, but currently he has 2 baby mothers and 3 kids. He hasn't stayed out of jail for more than 6 months. I have known him all my life, since I could talk and walk, and now I am 25. When he is high, he steals from my grandmother, who is my last living grandparent. He mistreats his kids and is rarely around to raise them. When he is present, he just sends his children to my grandmother so that he can continue using. He smells of alcohol and cigarettes, has 5 missing teeth, cannot form a solid sentence, and dresses like someone from 2005 with a popped collar, sideways flat brim hat that is bedazzled, fake gold jewelry, and sagging pants past his thighs. He says the most vile, predatory things I have ever heard. I will never repeat what he said because it makes me physically sick. Just thinking about it makes my stomach turn. The last I heard, he was caught selling heroin, methamphetamine, and had 12 unregistered firearms in his house. As far as I know, he will be in prison for another 20 years or more. I genuinely could not care less for him. He has destroyed my mother's side of the family, and I truly hate him. I am in Canada, where cannabis is legal. Story 123. Nothing, I am just not interested. I will have a drink once a month in a social setting, but I cannot understand why someone would drink glass after glass until they get drunk. In all honesty, a glass of cold milk or some hot chocolate is much nicer. Alcohol has zero appeal for me apart from maybe a good wine now and then if I like the taste. I do not like feeling I am not in control of my body. Regarding drugs, I am just too scared. I took a few drags from a joint once with a friend just for fun, but that was it. I also avoid pills like the plague, no specific reason for that. I am probably just weird. I wait until a headache is extreme before taking an aspirin. Story 124. I really do not like the lifestyle that comes with it. I have walked that road, and no one ever warns you of the real danger. I used to party a lot and got sick from it. It has been years now, but that is behind me. Story 125. I grew up in a public house. I have seen too many people live out the last few decades of their lives in physical and mental tatters due to drinking alcohol excessively. Story 126. I have never been able to trust people with my well-being when I was intoxicated or under the influence of drugs. They treated me very poorly. I am now 99.9% sober with absolutely no drugs. Story 127. Laughing my ass off as if I avoid alcohol. I usually drink to remember the people I lost or just to relax. In due moderation, of course. Story 128. My good friend who is married and has children is doing drugs. He has everything and he is ruining it badly. It is just sad. Story 129. Avoid alcohol completely because drunk me was unpleasant. Semi-regular psilocybin usage is good for the soul though. A dose every 2 to 3 months. Story 130. Luckily, I feel happy and content with my life the way it is. Additionally, the actual effort needed to achieve them demotivates what mild curiosity I have. Story 131. The fact is that if I start doing it, unlike other people, I will have no moderation and go berserk to feel the high. Also, it does not appeal to me because I am not depressed. My vice would probably be casual encounters, to be honest. Story 132. Addicts are people who cannot afford their addictions. I cannot think of much apart from responsibility and routine being fundamentally that can be harshly reshaped abruptly and without much heads-up sometimes. I do not necessarily agree with my own statement, but it is something I have noticed. Needing street drugs when you are looking for an old prescription medication you have just been suddenly taken off from by your doctor leaves you in a very harsh situation if you cannot afford private prescriptions. I know a lot of ex-professionals who became street users. It is very sad. Our entire concept of drug use, prevention, and addiction is profoundly misunderstood. It is such a shame. Story 133. Literally, gaming. I wasted so much time and potential on gaming, which was arguably a bigger addiction, but it definitely kept me away from drugs until I stopped gaming and started experimenting right after college. Before, I was straight edge, but boredom does wonders when you are not proactive with it. Story 134. Growing up, I had an older sibling who became heavily involved in drinking, then drugs, and worse, all while they were in high school and I was in middle school. I saw how spectacularly their life went down in flames and how, 30 years later, they are still dealing with the consequences. At the time, I did not want to make my parents' lives even worse, so I avoided alcohol and drugs completely. Today, I avoid them because every alcoholic drink I have ever tasted has been unpleasant, and because I am simply not interested in drugs. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.